Hello everyone, my name is Pixlriffs and welcome back to Skyblock 1.16. I hope you guys are having a good day. We are back here at the mob grinder. We're here. I have been doing a little bit of work just slashing away at these guys. As you can tell, I have 52 levels right now, so I've been at this for a while and this is my reward. We have a good sample of mob drops here, a lot of stuff that is going to be incredibly useful to us. Not least the fact that we now have 7 iron ingots, 5 redstone dust, and potatoes and carrots, which we can now use to start ourselves a crop farm with those. And those are going to be very useful later for trading with farmer villagers, etc. So we will probably keep those in supply whenever we want to. Not to mention, I can finally get away from eating all of the melon slices and farming melons to the greatest extent. We have a lot of other stuff as well, like all of this gold armor, which, yes, we are going to smelt down into gold nuggets. Get ourselves a gold ingot here and there as well. Might be able to trade with some piglins and see what we get, but we are probably going to start ourselves a zombie piglin farm soon anyway. So I'm hoping that we should have the opportunity to get plenty of gold through that. We also have a ton of bones, which means, of course, a ton of bone meal for when we want to expand our farm and end up farming crops easily, and trees, of course. Plenty of those to grow in the near future. I even have a little bit of chainmail here that I could smelt down for some iron nuggets if we wanted some extra iron ingots. Getting the chainmail, obviously, less often than the gold armor, but still worth having some of that. I could even end up wearing some of it if I feel like doing so. And perhaps most importantly at this stage, because I've already dealt with phantoms several times already, we have a bunch of string, 2 of which I'm going to turn into wool, and the rest I'm going to keep there just in case we need it for tripwire and other stuff that could be useful for redstone contraptions. So I'm going to put the rest of the string back in this chest for now, and we're going to take all of the gravel, plus the potatoes, carrots, iron, and redstone back up to the surface. The enchanted bows up here, one of which actually has power 3, are going to stay here for now, but we may end up picking one of those in the near future. As you can see, though, I've got a fair amount of bows already, and we might use those to craft some dispensers with the iron and the redstone when we get the opportunity. And I can think of no better time than right now while the sun is setting. I just tried to punch a couple of the skeletons once again and got hit by a bit of thorns on one of the pieces of armor, and I don't really have any sword durability left. My sword just broke, and I have an iron sword that I picked up from a zombie, but I don't really feel like using that constantly right now while I don't need to. So let's hop down here, let's grab a little bit of the wood from this chest, and let's make our first bed. And as you can see, we've been blessed by a giant tree. The third block of wool is one I already crafted that was in that chest, and we can at last make ourselves a white bed. I'm going to pop that down in the middle of this platform here, because it's probably the largest open area that I have right now without me jumping out onto somewhere that I don't want to be respawning. So we now have 3 potatoes we can use to start a farm. I've got a carrot there as well, and I really need to get some storage sorted out. So I think that's something we will do in this episode, along with starting a slightly more advanced crop farm and probably farming a little bit more dirt so that we can expand our grass platform and maybe, fingers crossed, get some passive mobs spawning in here as well. So one thing that it is always worth noting about the mechanics of Minecraft, often overlooked simply because you don't really have too much of a problem with these in the overworld, but if you are letting crops grow naturally, you actually get better results from growing them in individual rows. So if, for example, I start here with a row of wheat, and then have a row of potatoes, and then another row of wheat, and then another row of carrots, or something like that, you will find that each of these tends to grow a little bit faster, because for whatever reason, the game's code is programmed so that alternating rows of crops actually receive a bonus boost to their growth. So as I expand this farm a little bit here, we should start to see the crop growth while we are away from the farm take a little bit less time than it was doing previously, because it's being promoted by there being rows of other crops in between each of them. So now we've got enough carrots and potatoes to work with a larger crop. I'm going to plant the carrots on this side and the potatoes down the center here. And the potatoes, I think, are probably going to be my most valuable crop for now. Obviously, later on, we'll want to farm a lot of wheat so that we can breed some animals, but potatoes are going to be a really good source of food. Baked potatoes are possibly some of the best food we can have right now, and I think bread is roughly equivalent, but bread, of course, costs 3 wheat. So I think just grabbing a ton of potatoes for now is potentially the best thing we can do. And with the potatoes replanted, a full stack in hand, and a little bit extra in the inventory, I think we're going to start smelting some of these up, and we'll put enough in here so that we can have a full stack of food, which should hopefully keep us going for a little while. Still going to have to be a little bit careful that I don't drop into the void carrying all of those supplies, but definitely worth having. Now, I mentioned expanding my storage a little bit, and I think what I'm actually going to do is fill in this platform over here and potentially expand that a little bit more now that we are growing plenty of wood. I'm going to expand that out to include a little bit of area here for chests, because I really think I want to move the chest that's floating on the top of the farm away and have that end up go somewhere else. And we need to have a little bit more expanded storage for some of the items that we're going to be getting in the near future. Not to mention bringing up a bunch of the mob drops that we are now farming down below. It'd be really nice to have some place to store them that felt a little bit more permanent until we get villager trading set up and we end up getting rid of some of that. And of course, now we're getting a decent amount of wood from all of this. I can start using wood to create things like torches more frequently, and I'm going to make a little storage shed over here out of oak wood. Obviously, we haven't bridged out to any of the other islands to get the other types of trees yet, but I think as long as I can farm a little bit more oak wood here, we can make a little storage shed, make sure it is lit up with torches so we don't have to worry about making the entire thing out of slabs, and I think this could be a cozy little place to store all of our stuff until we get automated storage on the go a little bit later. And there we go. We have ourselves a lovely little storage shed here in the sky, and I think I want to surround this with a little bit more grass. So I'm probably going to start farming up a little bit of dirt. The way we're going to do that, of course, if you missed this in the previous Skyblock series, is by combining dirt and gravel to get coarse dirt, and that will basically double the amount of dirt we put into it. So we now have 40 coarse dirt, which can then be hoed. Once again, the hoe comes in incredibly useful, and when you do that, it just reverts it back into regular dirt the first time, and from there, of course, to farmland, but we don't need to use this for farmland at all. We're just going to use it as regular dirt. And using this method, now that we have a reliable source of gravel from those zombies, and potentially an even more reliable source thanks to the pigmen and the piglins, rather, and their bartering loot table, we should be able to reproduce dirt as much as we want, which is, of course, enormously important in Skyblock, because we'll need it for farmland, we'll need it for grass, for spawning passive mobs, and we also want to make the place look pretty. And in my case, that's just going to mean making a little dirt platform around the outside of the shed here, and then letting the grass spread from this patch over here, combining it all into one cohesive landscape. That's really something I want to do with this, is make it feel a little bit less like a bunch of unconnected platforms in the sky, and sort of create a bit of a landscape as we go. And now the grass should start to spread from here very slowly, because grass doesn't really spread all that fast, but with a few torches lighting up the area, we should make sure that we have adequate light on top of these blocks for all of the grass to spread. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, you cannot use a hoe on these blocks here because they already have the trapdoor blocks above them. So if I wanted to make sure that happened, I'd have to take out the trapdoors and then hoe that and then put the trapdoor back. Bit of a process, but I guess we'll make do. And I plan to do the same on the opposite side here, although getting the grass to spread all the way around is going to be a long and slow process. But I think we'll probably save some of this coarse dirt, hoe it, turn it back into regular dirt, and once again, combine it with the gravel so that we can get a little bit more. Okay, and after farming a little bit more dirt and coarse dirt, I now have a stack left over in the chest, and I think I'm going to try and apply the rest of this around the back of the structure here. It will also allow me to fill in some of the areas around the back where I didn't quite get to fill out the rest of the roof. Like around the back here, I always get really annoyed by stuff like this, but the back wall of the shed here basically is just a flat, straight line, doesn't have any kind of overhang like the front does, and I kind of want to correct that. I also missed a block off of the corner when I was doing the overhang for the rest of the roof. But I needed enough torches to do that, and we should have enough charcoal in the chest here to make a few more of those. With the potatoes all cooked up, we can get some charcoal cooking up in the furnace as well, and this is just all a well-oiled machine at this point. We have enough torches to light the rest of this up, so when the grass spreads, which it is doing, but very slowly, it should have plenty of light around here, and we're also protecting ourselves from mobs in the process. And I think one of the things we are going to do differently this time around from my previous Skyblock series is we're going to make the passive mob spawning platform here in the sky on a level with the rest of this island here at Y63. And it really doesn't matter what height animals will spawn at. Of course, as with the hostile mob spawner, it will be more efficient the further down we go in the world, and at Y0 you will start to see mobs spawning incredibly quickly. If you end up getting rid of any mobs that are down there, they will respawn pretty fast once you are spawning distance away, so 23 blocks or more away. But I kind of feel like having all of the mobs up here with the rest of the stuff that I consider the peaceful area of the Skyblock Island, which is going to be up here around my storage area, my farm, the cobblestone generator, and the tree farm here. And I want to make sure that we have all of that stuff accessible to us up here, because in the previous series I never really did a whole lot with the animals. I didn't do a huge amount of animal farming and breeding. I just ended up using them when I needed to, and then just killing them whenever I needed more passive mobs to spawn. So I think this time around I kind of want to take a different approach to that and actually breed the animals so that we have at least a breeding pair of each kind. I'm just going to scout around the edge here doing a brief check of light levels, aside from on the slabs here where the light is a little bit lower, but that doesn't matter because they are not spawnable blocks. I think we're in the clear here. I think all of these blocks have adequate light, and the reason I constructed the roof of the storage shed this way is that there are no solid blocks in it. It's all either stairs, slabs, or in the case of the sides there, trapdoors, and that's actually going to make sure the roof of the shed is not spawnable, unlike the roof of the house in my previous Skyblock series, which actually ended up spawning a pillager patrol at one point. I can also now start to organize the storage shed a little bit more, and I think what I'm going to do is start putting wood and wood-related items in these two chests here on the side. So we're going to have the saplings and wood and stuff in here, and we're going to have the wood components here, things like sticks and stairs, trapdoors, chests, that kind of stuff can go in there. We'll obviously put cobblestone somewhere close by as well, because we'll need some more of that stuff as we go, and then some of the stuff we'll need a little bit later on can be stored further back in here so that we don't have to worry about it messing up the chests towards the front of the stuff that we're going to need regularly. Food is also going to be one of these, and I also have barrels worked into the structure, mainly as a detail block, but it would also be kind of a good idea to store occasional bits and pieces in there if we need to. Another reason to build a passive mob spawning platform up here instead of down in the void is because at Y40 and below, you start to encounter slime spawning if you're in a slime chunk, and I kind of lucked into the slime chunk in my last playthrough. I sort of built a platform out there that started spawning slimes without me realizing, and then I was lucky enough that my passive mob spawning platform was not in a slime chunk. However, I can't really guarantee that that would be the case this time around. I haven't taken the coordinates of any of the slime chunks, and we are more likely to encounter them by happenstance than we are by intentionally looking for them. I'm not planning on using any additional tools or anything to go looking for those. So by building up here in a more accessible spot to the island, we're also avoiding accidentally spawning some slimes until we really want to deal with that stuff, at which point I'll be slightly better equipped. And it feels good to finally take all of the items out of this chest and take that down. I think I'm also going to install some furnaces at the back of this section here, and we can probably store some fuel in the nearby barrels, that kind of stuff. I think it's all going to work out splendidly now that we have this storage area, and I'm going to put cobblestone and stone in here. We'll probably include some of the slabs and stuff in the chest above, along with basalt and obsidian and gravel and all of the stuff that is, you know, close to stone but isn't exactly the stuff that I'm going to be building everything out of. We also, I just realized, have these warped planks that we can still use and warped warp blocks. And you know what? I have a feeling that maybe we could get a little bit more dirt a little easier by using a composter as well. And now that I have an excess of saplings in this chest, we can start composting some of those, and maybe when we're able to return to the nether and reclaim some of the warped nylium so that we can start farming warped wart and crimson wart, we could potentially have a very easily compostable supply from those. We'll keep the sea pickles and the other plants in here. I think I might keep the turtle egg in this chest here. I'm not entirely sure when we're going to use those, but we might need some turtles a little bit later on. We might want to get a turtle shell helmet, of course. And I think maybe the phantom membrane and stuff will go in this chest with some of the other mob drops. That seems like a sensible thing to do. Now, with a few more slabs, we can make ourselves that composter, and the warped warp blocks actually compost pretty well in my experience. So we'll put one of these back here. We'll compost that. There we go. All 7 of those composted just fine, and it doesn't look like we got any dirt out of that this time, unless I just missed it entirely. We've got 25 dirt on us right now. Let's see if we get any more this time. Nope, looks like we just got some bone meal out of that. So maybe that has been removed from the Skyblock data pack, and it only gives us dirt from the coarse dirt trick at this point, which is fine. I feel like we've got one way of making dirt. That should be enough for us. Certainly feels nice settling down in my bed with a roof over my head, and much like in my survival guide playthrough, I think this storage shed is actually going to end up being the place I sleep the most often and where my respawn point is set. Not that we're planning on dying in this episode, but if we end up dying in future, then potentially we will end up respawning there. We've got 15 apples now, which should hopefully end up being turned into some golden apples at some point, and that will be very useful for curing some villagers. Looking at what we've got here, I really do need to start farming some sugarcane as well, so we can turn that into paper, and later, when we get the opportunity to make some books, we can get some bookshelves on the go, eventually ending up with an enchanting setup once we have the opportunity to acquire diamonds, which is going to happen once we've been to the end. There's a lot of progress between now and then, but hopefully we should end up making our way there at some point in this series. So while the grass spreads around the back of the shed here, and we think about where we're going to place a sugarcane farm and the animal enclosure once the animals start spawning in, I think I'm going to make a little bit more dirt and farm a little bit more cobblestone, and I'll come back to you guys when we're ready to make some more progress. So that's a little bit more work done, and I think I might actually, if I can manage to take these blocks down somewhat safely, remove the rest of this block of grass from over here, in the knowledge that I will probably need to reinstate that torch and probably build up something over here just to make sure that I can re-access the kind of water pipe down to the mob spawner at this point. But I at least got myself the sugarcane farm set up, and around the back here I want to start the passive mob spawning platform that's basically going to come out from the shed here and is going to be a 3-block wide platform, at least for the first little while, until we can get a little bit more of the grass to spread further out, and then that platform a little further away from everything else is going to be a little bit wider and provide a bit more room for passive mobs to spawn, in the hope that we'll eventually be able to get an animal corral set off here that we can just fence off and make sure that we've got at least 2 of everything in here. 2 cows, pigs, sheep, whatever we can grab from this area, and probably some chickens as well, so that we can maybe get started with an automatic chicken breeder further down the line. Just add some torches to this once again to make sure that the grass can spread and that the platform stays lit up against future hostile mob spawns, and the sugarcane farm is expanding very, very slowly, inch by inch, block by block, but I'm using my usual, what I think of as the pinwheel design. I don't think it's actually called that, but basically you set everything up so each block is offset by a couple here, so that you end up with every block of dirt in the farm being able to potentially plant some sugarcane on. I might have to add some water to one of these to make sure that that can be hydrated, that that block there works, but basically everything else is potentially a block that sugarcane can sit on. Again, this one here I think is the only other outlier that still needs hydration. But yeah, like I said, basically everything else in this whole setup can have sugarcane planted on it, which makes for a pretty space-efficient sugarcane farm that we can harvest manually until we have enough sugarcane and enough redstone components to start auto-harvesting some of this stuff with pistons and observers and that kind of thing. It really does help that you can create quite a lot of dirt very quickly using this coarse dirt method, and what I've been doing is putting the hoe in my offhand just so I can use the right-click action, and then using the shovel in my left hand to break all of the dirt afterwards, and that proves a fairly efficient way of doing this. At least it seems a little bit faster than placing and breaking every single block in turn. At this point, I am getting to the stage where my tools will actually wear out quite quickly, and I can salvage a little bit more extra durability by combining some of the half-broken ones, but occasionally I do need to make myself extra stone shovels and that kind of thing so that I can keep grinding through all of this dirt and coarse dirt. But hopefully we should be able to build out this animal spawning platform a little bit further, and I'm not entirely certain if this is actually the case, but some folks have told me in the past that it isn't possible to spawn animals super close to the center of the world, although that may just apply on servers rather than on the single-player Skyblock map, so I wouldn't take that as gospel. I think it may just be one of those things that happens occasionally on some versions of Skyblock. On servers, I expect they'd probably have something along the lines of spawn protection, basically stopping anybody from building stuff in the center of a spawn location where other players could start to appear or something like that. So I think what I'm going to put here is a pretty wide dirt platform. We'll make sure this entire area is lit up and probably fenced off just to make sure that the animals don't end up wandering off the platform into the sky. But the idea is that once we set up a large enough grass platform here, then when we're down at the mob spawner, we're going to be a good distance away from the rest of the landmass up here, and that is potentially going to give the animals enough distance to spawn here, because you do still need to be at least 23 blocks away from any passive mob spawns as well as hostile mob spawns. And at this point, the grass has spread around to the other side of the shed here and is making its way towards that spawning platform. So there is still the opportunity for mobs to spawn on the rest of this grass here as well, but having it a little bit further away from the center of the island and further away from the area we're going to be standing and working at the hostile mob spawner is potentially going to be a little bit better. And in the meantime, this sugarcane will have a little bit more chance to grow, meaning that I should be able to end up with a decent crop of it once we're done farming a few more hostile mobs down there, getting some more bone meal, some more gravel, anything we can use to reproduce dirt and grow the trees at this stage is going to be a way we can make progress. And I have been doing a little bit more of that off camera. We have got one more redstone dust and one more iron ingot, as well as the mob drop chest looking pretty healthy at this point, so I think it's going to be good once we can get some clerics to trade with to get rid of all of this rotten flesh that way. But at this stage, I'm saving basically everything I can so that we can use that for villager trading and the other purposes that many of these items have. And so for one last attempt before I wrap up the episode, I'm going to go down to the hostile mob spawner, grab a few more drops and a few more levels, and see if the grass can spread far enough and if the rest of this grass will make a couple of spawning attempts that we can get some passive mobs before the end of this episode. Oh, and first of all, I should probably make some kind of pathway out to the mob spawner now. Well, folks, I've given it a solid amount of time and even expanded the spawning platform here, but it looks like we aren't getting any passive mob spawns quite yet. It may be that we have to do what we did in the previous season of Skyblock that I did, and maybe even attempt passive mob spawning down at the level of the void. I really didn't want to do that because it does involve waiting for the grass to grow all the way down to void level so that we can have a passive mob spawning platform there, but it may just be that efficiency is going to be the way forward here. Either that, or I just have to spend a bit more time hanging around waiting for stuff to spawn and increase the area of this farm so that there is more spawnable space and it's a little bit further away from the area where I'm working here. But in the meantime, we do have a pretty active and viable manual sugarcane farm here, and we are farming mob drops by the bucket load, and we even have a place to store them in the form of this wonderful shed, which I'm fairly certain will have enough storage space for a little while. However, I have been picking up a lot of stuff from all of these mob spawner visits, and we do have a lot of gold stuff that we can start to smelt down, or maybe even cherry pick some of the better parts of so that we can use these and wear them to barter with piglins. But for now, I reckon that's where we're going to wrap up this episode of Skyblock in 1.16. I do hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, don't forget to leave a like on it, subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you guys soon. Take care. Bye for now.